Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Technology, a podcast exploring the latest in computers, networking, home automation, mobile computing, and all things technology related. Our hosts will take a deeper dive into the latest and greatest in tech trends and give you the information you need to enable your tech-centric world.
This is Insights into Technology, Episode 15, Cyber Hygiene and Meta's Purge. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen. This is your tech news of the week. The first article comes to us from Cyberscoop. They tell us about CISA's cyber hygiene boom. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, has reported a significant 201% increase in enrollment for its cyber hygiene service among critical infrastructure organizations over 2 years, with the communications sector leading the charge at 300%. Other sectors such as emergency services, critical manufacturing, and water systems also demonstrated substantial growth. This surge has contributed to moderate progress in achieving CISA's cybersecurity performance goals, including mitigating vulnerabilities, limiting exposure of operational technology to the public internet, and improving encryption and email security practices. Key improvements highlighted include a 50% drop in critical exploited vulnerabilities and a reduction in the time taken to resolve secure socket layer vulnerabilities from 200 days to under 50. Despite these advancements, challenges remain, such as a 63% exposure rate of operational technology in government services. The report underscores CISA's influence in driving critical infrastructure organizations toward enhanced security postures and emphasizes ongoing efforts to reduce cyber risks in a complex threat environment. So the surge in cyber hygiene enrollment signals a growing awareness, and I think this is really the biggest takeaway from this. The 201% increase in the program enrollment reflects a growing recognition of the need for proactive cybersecurity measures among organizations. And really, when it comes to cybersecurity, awareness is usually probably the number one priority. Out of sight, out of mind philosophy of people ignoring cybersecurity, I think, is kind of gone the way of the dodo bird. With a 300% enrollment spike from the communications companies, this highlights how industries dependent on seamless operations have embraced vulnerability scanning as a necessity. And the recent several stories that we've had with the telecom industry and the security compromises they've experienced is a great example of that. Moving more in the direction of cyber hygiene awareness in those industries, I think, is going to be a major plus. The increased adoption of government-led cybersecurity services is helping to reshape private sector confidence in collaborative security efforts. Businesses rely on public and private partnerships for securing digital operations. The frameworks that we've been talking about for the last few episodes are a great example of that. A lot of these frameworks are being pushed by government agencies or endorsed by them. And the adoption of those frameworks with the cooperation of commercial and enterprise environments is really the direction that we all need to go to ensure proper cybersecurity. This may also bring performance improvements in critical infrastructure. Progress is key in key cybersecurity performance goals, including the 50% reduction in critical vulnerabilities and faster remediation of SSL flaws. Tell us that even when we're aware of our cybersecurity issues and when we can keep these in the headlines and keep these in the forefront, not only can we make things more secure, we can also make things more efficient for all the users of this technology as well. These efforts led directly to reducing exploitable services, and I think that's a key. A reduction in exploitable services of 12, what was 12 per organization to 8 per organization represents a significant progress in securing enterprise systems. The data underscores the importance of regular vulnerability scanning and patch management, reducing attack surfaces. Again, this is one of those things where cybersecurity is not a one and done solution. It's an implemented solution. It's a process of continual improvement and monitoring and scanning because your attackers out there are continuing to evolve. So if you are not vigilant in your monitoring and scanning, you very well could be exposed. The news also has implications for enterprise policy and strategy moving forward. The impact noted in the report suggests that while there is improvement, achieving robust cybersecurity across critical infrastructure sectors is still an ongoing challenge. Again, T-Mobile was in the news just last week with some of the challenges that they had. This reflects directly on enterprise strategies that need to align with government recommended security goals. So, a couple of questions come out of this. Should enterprises adopt CISA's cybersecurity performance goals as part of their strategic frameworks? It's standards-based. It's government-sponsored. There's a chance that you can get some assistance from the government with it. So it's probably a decent direction for especially small and medium-sized businesses to go down. It's a practical way of achieving some of this security. How do government insights into systemic risks influence board-level decisions in the private sector? You've got the federal government out there now that's basically trying to impose certain cybersecurity standards, and there's a cost to it. There's an impact on production. There's an impact on your business's efficiency. These are all influences. These are all variables that your board level management needs to take into account and how it's going to impact your company. So, it's all definitely a move in the right direction. Seeing the federal government step up and provide these resources, and if nothing else, to at least coordinate the effort, I think is a good thing. And I hope more people, as a result, see this and take advantage of some of the resources that are out there. It can only help you get better at security if you pay attention to these things. Our next article comes to us from Security Week. Hacktivist or hustler, the FunSec mystery deepens. A newly emerged ransomware group called FunkSec claimed responsibility for over 80 attacks in December of 2024. The attacks are leveraging AI-generated malware written in Rust. Believed to be inexperienced threat actors operating under a ransomware as a service model, FunkSec utilizes double extortion tactics, threatening to publicly leak stolen data if victims do not pay. They stand out for their low ransom demands and for releasing some of their source code online, as well as for incorporating distributed denial of service capabilities, a hidden virtual network computing module, and AI-driven tools in their operations. Despite their swift rise to infamy, FunkSec's activists claims appear questionable, with the group often recycling data from older campaigns. Their public promotions reference previous hacktivist collectives, but experts remain skeptical about these associations. Still, the novelty of their AI-based tactics has grabbed the attention of the cybersecurity world, raising concern about how readily accessible tools can empower inexperienced operators to deploy destructive ransomware at scale. And again, that's the takeaway from this, is how dangerous this type of service itself can be. FunkSec's use of AI-driven code generation hints at a future where sophisticated ransomware becomes easier to create, even by less experienced operators. Your script kiddies out there have just gotten much more dangerous. This trend can rapidly escalate the cyber threat landscape, forcing enterprises to rethink and strengthen their security measures. By following the ransomware as a service model, FunkSec offers its malware toolkit to other criminals, magnifying the impact on businesses worldwide. The service-based approach lowers entry barriers to cybercrime and contributes to a higher volume of attacks on enterprise systems. Every time you make it easier for somebody to commit a crime, it's more likely that they're going to commit that crime, I think. FunkSec's strategy of encrypting files and threatening to release stolen data amps up the pressure on commercial entities to pay ransoms. You've got stories now where government agencies in Europe are making it illegal for some institutions to pay ransomware demands at this point in time, or else they're going to pay, I guess, more ransomware ransoms to the government. This also puts sensitive corporation information at heightened risk and adds new layers of legal and reputational concerns. Gone are the days of people who breach your security and then force you to pay them to not release information. That kind of goes by the wayside when they wind up selling that information anyway, even after you've paid your ransom. So it kind of cuts into the whatever trust, I guess, you could have for these criminals. Their relatively modest ransom requests, sometimes as low as $10,000, might actually entice more people to pay. When you get these attacks that come out and they're asking for $10 million, a lot of your cybersecurity insurance out there won't cover anything like that. There's limits on what they'll cover. And a lot of the companies simply can't afford to pay that, especially when you're hitting small and medium-sized businesses. When you start asking for something that's, I want to say it's reasonable, but is any ransom for your data really reasonable? But when you're asking for sums of money as low as $10,000, some companies are going to bite the bullet and do that. If not doing that is going to force them to shut down or have extended periods of outages, it's going to cost them even more money. Enterprises relying on third-party vendors or smaller organizations with fewer security resources may become more attractive targets for groups like FunkSec because they can pay these and because they know they don't have the ability to mitigate them very easily. Their AI-based malware, combined with modular attack tools such as denial of service attacks, password scrapers, or a hidden VNC connection, can employ weak links in supply chains and gain broader access to commercial networks. So even though these attacks are not as sophisticated as what we're seeing in some of the more resource-intensive nation-state hacks, it's probably more dangerous the way that they're going about it. They're making attacks easier for people. And if we've seen anything over the last 5 to 10 years, it's that there's money to be made in malware. And if there's money to be made, somebody's going to figure out how to do it. And you're going to see your attacks continue. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. I don't think we have much choice but to deal with it at this point in time. Try to shut them down whenever possible, but be vigilant about how you're protecting your network. Backups. When you're talking about encrypted malware here, the biggest defense against that is to have backups. A lot of small companies can't afford a robust backup and disaster recovery solution. And as a result, when their data or their networks are compromised, they're completely at the mercy of these hackers. There are plenty of services out there. I happen to favor Datto at my organization, but there are plenty of organizations out there solutions, I should say, out there that can provide you with robust backups. I've used CrashPlan. I've used, there's another one that I use at home that is available. They have commercial options available. I mean, even using an AWS storage solution to just drop your data to can get you back up within minutes of being attacked. And that's exactly the kind of mitigation that these companies, these hackers and attackers don't want you to employ because it puts them out of business. So very dangerous. And it's one of those issues that's going to continue to evolve, and we'll keep an eye on it. CISA warns of second Beyond Trust vulnerability. Another article from Security Week. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has issued an urgent alert regarding a second vulnerability in Beyond Trust privileged remote access and remote support solutions. Tracked as CVE 2024-12686, this medium severity command injection flaw has been actively exploited, including in an attack linked to Chinese state-sponsored hackers targeting the U.S. Department of Treasury, which we talked about previously. The vulnerability allows hackers with administrative privileges to upload malicious files and to execute commands on affected systems. This follows the December discovery of another critical zero-day vulnerability, CVE 2024-12356, also exploited in the wild. CISA has mandated federal agencies to patch the vulnerabilities by February 3rd under Binding Operational Directive 22-01, urging other organizations to act swiftly. Beyond Trust investigation revealed that these exploits are part of a larger campaign involving compromised API keys. The attacks highlight the growing sophistication of state-sponsored cyber threats, emphasizing the need for robust security measures across public and private sectors. So this warning signifies an increase in the risk for enterprise systems. The active exploitation and vulnerabilities like these underscore the risks associated with privileged access management tools, which for small and medium-sized businesses, you can't get away from because that's how you're going to manage your network or how your MSP, your managed service provider, is going to manage their clients' networks. These are tools that are critical to enterprise IT. The potential for attackers to gain administrative control highlights a vulnerability in widely used enterprise solutions. This is also yet another example of state-sponsored threats targeting key institutions. Chinese hackers are targeting sensitive offices within the U.S. Treasury, demonstrates how such vulnerabilities are exploited not only for financial gain, but also as part of a geopolitical cyber campaign. I mean, the title of last week's show was U.S. Under Cyber Siege, and I really think that's the case here. China has severely amped up their efforts to penetrate our networks and exfiltrate data on our networks. And, our government's immediate response is let's ban TikTok. Well, I've yet to evidence to suggest that TikTok has been a vector into any of these breaches at this point in time. And I think we need to really focus on what the cause of these breaches are, defending against them, and possibly even retaliating. If we were attacked militarily, we wouldn't be sitting here and letting them attack us over and over and over again. What are we doing as a government to retaliate on these types of things if they're state-sponsored? And all evidence seems to suggest that they are state-sponsored at this point in time. Now, backing that down a bit, these types of threats do put pressure on enterprises to act quickly. The CISA directive mandates that federal agencies patch by February 3rd, which is not much time at all. but the broader implications for enterprises are clear at this point. Timely vulnerability management and patching are critical. If you do not have a resource within your organization that is handling these things, I mean, patches come out constantly. We just had Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, and again, over 100 or so patches came out. And it's like, for an operating system that's as mature as Windows 11 is, you should not have that many bugs, especially when you're patching 100 plus a month. But if you're not patching these, you're exposed to them. And if you don't have somebody in your organization that's making sure that your workstations are patched, that your servers are patched, that your network hardware is patched, you're asking for trouble at that point in time. If you don't have a resource, there are plenty of third-party MSPs and consultants that can come in and assist you with these types of things. If you don't have in-house expertise, you need to get some level of expertise to assist you with these things. Organizations using BeyondTrust need to assess their systems and either patch them or mitigate the risks immediately. That's not to say, you bring in a professional to patch and to take care of these things. That's not to say that they couldn't introduce flaws or malicious code or human error. You need to have some level of maintenance going on a regular basis. This raises additional concerns about our supply chain security, which we've talked about. BeyondTrust's role in enterprise IT as a privileged access management tool places it at the heart of supply chain security. The incident reveals the cascading risks that a single compromised tool can pose across systems and organizations. Unfortunately, I don't think you can avoid the risk. You need to have the management tools in place, especially with networks that are getting progressively larger and more complicated, and applications that are increasing in complexity. You need to have these tools in place in order to manage all of that. And sometimes those tools become a source of problems, and that's what you have to be careful for. The challenge, as always, is balancing usability and security. Just like convenience and security, these things are mutually exclusive. The complexities of these attacks raises questions about the trade-offs between usability and security, and enterprises need to prioritize user awareness and robust operational security practices to complement technical defenses. But you can't do it to the point that people can't do their job anymore. There has to be some level of access to continue to function. I mean, if you're basically just going to lock the place up and board up the windows so nobody can get in, then you still can't do your job at that point in time. So there has to be some legitimate level of compromise between usability and security. And hopefully, if you've got the services of an IT professional helping you out, they'll be able to make those distinctions for you. We're going to take a quick break, but before we do, I want to reach out and invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find all of our audio and video versions listed as Insights into Things. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere basically you can get a podcast. You can also reach out, give us your feedback, tell us how we're doing, give us any topics you'd like us to talk about, comment on what we've presented here. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can also call in, leave a voicemail for us, and we'll get you on the podcast as appropriate. That call-in number is 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. I also do want to announce we are on Blue Sky now. If you look for Insights into Things, bsky.social, you'll find us. We're also on LinkedIn. If you look for Insights into Things Productions LLC, you'll find us on LinkedIn. We do publish information technology-related news articles and important information on both of those platforms to try to keep all of our audience informed. So take a look at us. Take a look for us there. Or you can go to our website and get links to all of our social media at www.insightsintothings.com. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of your favorite gaming podcast finishing with a play?
Oh, no!
Well, check out No Credits Rolled, where we play the games but rarely finish them. How's it going, folks? I'm Sam Whalen, your friendly host at No Credits Rolled, the ultimate gaming podcast, where we dish out the latest scoops and reviews on all your beloved video games.
Hey, listen!
Not only that, but we spice things up with some guest interviews and even give you, yes, you, a chance to have your say. Tune in every other week for a fresh dose of No Credits Rolled, available on all major podcast platforms, and hit us up on social media at No Credits Rolled. So why wait? Let's dive into the gaming world together, where finishing games is optional, but the fun is guaranteed.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology, from Meta Hire to Meta Fire. This article comes to us from MSNBC. Meta Platforms is planning a significant workforce adjustment, cutting about 5% of its 72,000 staff, or around 3,600 positions, through performance-based terminations. That seems to be the latest buzzword nowadays when we do mass layoffs. CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced the move in an internal memo, citing a decision to expedite the removal of low-performing employees as part of a stricter performance management approach. While the company typically phases out underperformers over the course of a year, it will now conduct more comprehensive cuts, aligning with the end of its current performance cycle in February. U.S.-based employees affected by the cuts are expected to be notified by February 10th, while international employees will receive updates at a later date. The reductions will only apply to staff eligible for performance reviews, with Zuckerberg assuring impacted workers of, quote, generous severance packages consistent with previous layoffs. Meta also plans to fill the vacated roles with new hires throughout the year, signaling ongoing workforce restructuring amid a competitive tech landscape. But this is very similar to what we heard from Microsoft in last week's podcast, where they are using performance-based metrics to basically trim their workforce down. They didn't actively state that they were going to be doing additional hires like Meta did here, but I think time will tell whether or not there's any truth to that. Meta's decision to cut 5% of its workforce underlies a trend in tech giants recalibrating their workforce through performance-based terminations. The move signals heightened performance expectations and a leaner operational model. How does this shift in talent management affect enterprise computing? Could increased competition from their talent among tech giants create a ripple effect on innovation and efficiency across the sector? There's a lot of initiatives going on right now with AI and quantum computing and VR and all the other irons they've got in the fire right now, and you can't help but wonder if some of these projects may suffer with these losses here. By raising the bar on performance management, Meta sets a precedent that may influence other enterprises to adopt similar strategies. However, such moves risk impacting employee morale, creating an environment of insecurity even for high performers. Can enterprises strike a balance between maintaining high standards and fostering employee confidence? How does this approach impact productivity and retention in competitive industries? I, for one, am not a big fan of trying to manage through fear, and a lot of times that's what layoffs really are intended to do. You're obviously getting rid of some of the underperformers, but the reason for doing it in such a public way is to kind of scare the rest of the employees into improving their performance. And I find the carrot and stick approach, this being the stick portion of it, tends to be the least effective. If anything, what you'll wind up doing here usually is generating that sense of insecurity, which has people start looking to move to other jobs. And invariably, the people that leave the company voluntarily first are the best employees that you have. So you probably don't want to inspire them to make any rash moves like that. I think it's much better to use the carrot approach and inspire people, build them up, grow your people, invest in them. Filling vacated roles with new hires highlights a strategy to align workforce capabilities with evolving business goals. Whether or not Meta follows through with that, or if they're just going to do this layoff and then another layoff and another layoff. A lot of times when companies do public announcements of layoffs, they try to couch that bad news with the promise of hiring more people. And in my experience, that seldom actually works out. Meta's decision to accelerate performance-based terminations reflects a broader trend of redefining expectations in high-stakes industries. Other companies may follow suit, and we already talked about Microsoft doing so, setting a new industry standard for performance evaluation and accountability. Trend could push enterprises to adopt stricter performance metrics, or it could backfire by fostering that culture of fear and a high turnover. The problem is that every time you have a loss of any percentage of your employees, there's a certain, what we often call tribal knowledge that is proprietary to your organization, that only people that work there have developed, and people that have been there for extended periods of time have accumulated more of it. And when these people walk out the door, you're left scrambling to try to fill those holes, to, find those emails or figure out what these systems did, or, whatever the knowledge was that walked out the door. You tend to wind up hurting for that. And it can cause some serious issues with efficiencies moving forward. With Meta aiming to realign its workforce, there's potential for shifts in the development and delivery of enterprise-level tools, particularly in areas like AI, VR, and enterprise communication platforms. The staffing changes could influence the roadmap and reliability of Meta's enterprise products. Competitors may capitalize on any disruption caused by Meta's internal adjustments. It's hard to keep your competitive edge. It's hard to keep your pace up. It's hard to keep your development, your research and development going. And you've got people that may be walking out of here with vital knowledge that's going to your competitors and helping your competitors advance faster. So it's very, IT is not like other typical industries, manufacturing or retail or something like that, where a high turnover rate of your employees can be minimally impactful to the business because people are interchangeable. You find in technology that people tend to have specialties in what they do. They may be specialists in certain areas. They may have certain talents. They may have knowledge of certain proprietary information. And when you get into a cycle of layoffs and turnover from employees leaving on their own, it can certainly have a significant and a very negative impact on the overall organization. So companies need to be careful of that. But, I'm not telling Meta anything I'm sure they don't already know. Next up, Biden goes big on data centers. This one comes to us from the Associated Press. President Joe Biden has signed an executive order to accelerate the construction of large-scale AI infrastructure in the United States, focusing on data centers and new clean power facilities. Under the order, federal agencies must make government sites available for AI data centers and expedite their connection to renewable energy sources, aiming to support the energy-hungry computational needs behind advanced AI models. The Department of Defense and Departments of Defense and Energy will each designate at least 3 sites for private companies to build AI data centers, with developers shouldering all construction and clean power generation costs. The administration sees this effort as critical for national security and continued U.S. leadership in AI. This is particularly important given predictions that data center energy usage could account for up to 12% of the nation's electricity consumption by 2028. While the order intends to streamline the permitting process and encourage sustainable power solutions, some experts point to missing provisions, such as water use monitoring and guidance, as ongoing challenges to be addressed in future policies. The executive order aims to remove bottlenecks from constructing AI-optimized data centers, which, I think we're going all in with AI at this point in time. I'm not sure why the government is subsidizing it, though. That's a little alarming to me. This whole plan can accelerate commercial projects reliant on scalable high-performance computing. Faster permitting and federal site availability could mean quicker deployment and less red tape for enterprises. Whether or not this initiative will continue under the incoming Trump administration is up for debate. The order does mandate new data centers run on clean energy, which is not consistent with the Trump energy policies. This is expected to nudge companies towards greener power solutions. We'll see if that happens under the new administration. With data center electricity usage potentially soaring to 12% of the nation's total, this provision impacts both environmental targets and cost management strategies for enterprise IT. Again, environmental is not a priority for the incoming Trump administration. So I think, if anything, expecting this initiative to continue much longer is probably wishful thinking. Reserved federal sites and public labor agreements could help smaller AI companies compete against tech giants, thus opening the door to innovation across the commercial sector. This inclusive approach diversifies the AI marketplace and fosters new business-to-business partnerships. By building AI infrastructure within the U.S.'s borders, businesses can benefit from more secure supply chains and controlled access to cutting-edge technology. The onshoring strategy helps reduce reliance on overseas providers and fortifies enterprise cybersecurity postures. One of the things that we're seeing now is an intent to shut down the export of chips that are suitable or optimized for AI to companies like China already. And again, this is part of the whole cyber Cold War that's going on at this point in time. Having these resources in-house or onshore, as they say, is an advantage, especially for industries like, mine or anyone who does business with the Department of Defense, where there are already in place restrictions for offshoring data and provisions that require you to use domestic services and employee only U.S. citizens and a number of other controls, which is easily accomplished when you have these kind of resources onshore. But despite its emphasis on clean power, the order is largely silent on managing data centers' water usage, and this is where the real controversy comes from. We look at what's going on out in California right now, out west, the Southwest has a lot of data centers in them. They've already obviously got some water issues out there. They've got environmental issues. They've been under a 30-year historic drought out there. One of the things these data centers need is a lot of water for cooling purposes. They use them for radiant cooling. And there's no provision in here on how to manage that. So this could be a compounding problem that we simply kick down the line a little bit further, and we'll have to deal with it eventually. Next up, Microsoft's Copilot Chat, free AI bait or a $30 hook. This comes to us from The Verge. Microsoft has relaunched its business AI tool as Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. That's just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? Microsoft is now offering a free GPT-powered AI chat experience to tempt organizations into adopting its paid AI services. This rebranding of Bing Chat Enterprise integrates AI agents capable of automating tasks, managing email inboxes, and more, bridging the gap between everyday chat and the premium Microsoft 365 Copilot subscription. For $30 per user per month, businesses can gain deeper integrations with tools like Word and Excel, but Copilot Chat offers a taste of its capabilities without upfront commitment. The new pricing model introduces flexibility with pay-as-you-go options based on usage, measured in message credits. Credits in quotes. Generative AI tasks cost more credits compared to simpler responses, allowing businesses to control spending. The tool aims to attract more enterprises to Microsoft's AI ecosystem, leveraging its position as a leader in workplace software while showcasing how AI can enhance productivity and efficiency. So, this is another one of those situations where Microsoft is, first of all, they've put a product out there. They had people subscribe to the product, and then they decided to rebrand it and change it, and just the lack of consistency and the lack of stability coming out of Microsoft with these types of initiatives where they're basically playing by the seat of their pants here. They came out with a service. Chances are that service not only wasn't making money, was probably losing money because it was poorly thought out. And now they want to relaunch it to basically nickel and dime their users. This is very similar to some of their other licensing practices where everything they want to do is a subscription. It's to the point now where you're going to start seeing functions within Word. You want a spell check? Oh, but you have to pay an add-on subscription for that. You want templates? Oh, that's an add-on subscription for that. Everything they want to do. And these aren't even just subscriptions. These aren't flat subscriptions. In this case here, it's a metered subscription. It's basically like being a taxi cab, turning the meter on and not knowing, how you're getting to your destination and how much it's going to cost you. Microsoft tries to build this as, this allows you to pay what you want and manage your own usage and control your budgets. And really what it is, it's no different than microtransactions in video games or anything like that. It's a way for people to sign up for something and throw money away for a while and have that expense kind of lost in the shuffle. And they're going to nickel and dime you. And that type of licensing just annoys me. It really does. This new offering attempts to bridge AI accessibility and premium features. Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat provides the free entry point to AI-powered productivity, aiming to familiarize businesses with its capability. It's like a drug dealer. The first one's free, and then we're going to charge you for the rest once we get you addicted. Microsoft is counting on organizations using the pay-as-you-go model for flexible adoption. The introduction of the new pricing model aligns AI costs with business needs, or at least that's what Microsoft wants you to think. Organizations can manage expenses by tracking usage measured in messages, offering flexibility and control. And the problem is I'm sure the way that they created this it's a manageable solution. It's a usable, cost-effective solution if you want to invest in the management of it. And these are the types of things with Microsoft that you have to stay on top of. You have to monitor them constantly. You have to get some kind of idea of what your usage patterns are going to look like and hope to God that those usage patterns don't change with new employees or new initiatives or new technology that comes out or a new licensing model that Microsoft is famous for coming out with almost on a regular annual basis. And, they'll make one change to the licensing model. And if you've gotten comfortable with your month-to-month cost of this, their licensing model could throw that out the window and go get a huge bill. So trusting Microsoft to handle licensing is not a very good idea. It's a clear attempt at Microsoft shaping AI adoption in enterprise culture. Microsoft's strategic push into AI-powered workflows reflects a broader trend of embedding AI into enterprise culture. And I think the problem is that most people don't know what AI is at this point in time. And to make an investment like this, to make a commitment like this is difficult. So this is one of those things we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on. And we'll see how many changes Microsoft makes to this before it finally stabilizes and levels out. We're going to take our last break here, and then we're going to come back and talk to you about Zero Trust. We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. So we're going to talk about Zero Trust. And we're kind of short on time right now. I'm going to start the introduction here and we'll see how far we get and we'll go from there. If I have to, I'll break this up into more segments. So in today's evolving digital landscape, traditional security models are struggling to keep up with the demands of modern enterprises. The rise in remote work, cloud adoption, and increasingly sophisticated cyber threats have exposed vulnerabilities in perimeter-based security. As a response, Zero Trust Architecture, or ZTA, has emerged as the new gold standard in cybersecurity. Today, we're going to give you an introduction to Zero Trust, breaking down its core concepts, historical evolution, and the principles that make it critical for safeguarding organizations in today's interconnected world. So what is Zero Trust Architecture? So Zero Trust Architecture is a security model that assumes no entity inside or outside the network can be trusted by default. Pretty straightforward. Unlike traditional models that rely on securing a single perimeter, Zero Trust focuses on continuous verification, ensuring that users, devices, and systems must repeatedly prove their trustworthiness before accessing sensitive resources. At its core, Zero Trust embodies the principles of never trust, always verify. Now, there's been, an evolution to get to this point. There's been a history for Zero Trust. Zero Trust architecture represents a fundamental shift in cybersecurity philosophy. It rejects implicit trust, which was the hallmark of older models like trust but verify, and replaces it with the principle of never trust, always verify. This evolution reflects the growing sophistication of cyber threats and the expansion of networks beyond traditional perimeters. There were limitations of trust but verify. In early security models, organizations operated on the assumption that anything inside the network perimeter could be trusted. This model relied heavily on securing the perimeter with firewalls and perimeter defenses such as VPNs. These were used to protect trusted networks from outside threats. The model also relied on implicit trust. Once a user, device, or system gained access, it was granted broad, unrestricted trust. However, this approach became problematic as networks grew more complex. They faced rising challenges, like some advanced threats. Attackers exploited trust credentials to move laterally within networks undetected. Network expansions, cloud services, remote work, and IoT devices blurred the boundaries of traditional parameters. You also had to deal with insider threats. Malicious insiders or compromised systems operating inside the trusted zone became significant risks. So the limitations of trust but verify became evident. Securing a single perimeter was no longer sufficient to safeguard sensitive assets. So in the early 2000s, we get the model that's referred to as the castle and moat model. The castle and moat model dominated cybersecurity in the early 2000s. Organizations created strong perimeters, or the moat, around their internal systems, or the castle. Firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and virtual private networks were key tools for perimeter defense. Some of the key challenges here, while the model excelled at keeping external threats out, it failed to address internal threats and lateral movement. Once an attacker breached the perimeter, they could often access sensitive systems without further validation. So, right around 2009, we see the birth of Zero Trust. John Kindervag, a Forrester research analyst, formally introduced the concept of Zero Trust. He challenged the assumption of implicit trust within networks, stating that all users, devices, and systems must be verified continuously. The core principle of Zero Trust became never trust, always verify, meaning that access is granted based on identity verification and context, such as user role or device health. No entity is inherently trusted, even if it operates within the network. Kindervag's work marked the beginning of a new security paradigm, one that eliminated the weaknesses of the castle and moat model by adopting a least privileged access strategy. Present Zero Trust adoption in a cloud-first world. The modern cybersecurity landscape has accelerated the adoption of Zero Trust due to remote work, cloud migrations, and advanced threats. The key enablers of Zero Trust are Zero Trust Network Access, ZTNA. It replaces legacy VPNs by providing secure identity-based access to specific applications instead of the entire network. Microsegmentation. Networks are divided into smaller, isolated segments, limiting lateral movement and containing breaches, and as well as continuous verification. Real-time monitoring and behavioral analytics and context-aware access controls ensure that trust is never static. So a great example of this, a cloud-based enterprise implementing Zero Trust verifies user identity through multi-factor authentication, validates the device's security posture, and only grants access to specific resources relevant to the user's role. The evolution of cybersecurity from trust but verify to never trust, always verify reflects the dynamic nature of today's threat landscape. Zero trust architecture has emerged as the solution to address limitations of legacy security models, enabling organizations to secure their assets in an increasingly complex and distributed network. As organizations continue to adopt cloud technologies, support remote workforces, and combat advanced threats, the adoption of zero trust principles such as ZTNA, microsegmentation, and continuous verification will only accelerate. Zero trust is not just the future of cybersecurity, it's the foundation for securing modern digital environments. And zero trust goes hand in hand with security frameworks. It's simply a tool or a methodology of how to secure things. And in the coming episodes, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what some of these principles are and some of the implementations are, and get a little bit more in depth with zero trust and where it's going, where its future actually lies. That was all we had for today. Before we do go, I want to once again invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to Insights into Things on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any place you get a podcast these days. We'd also love to hear from you. You can write into us. You can email at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can call in and leave us a voicemail. Our call-in number is 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. Leave a message and let us know what you want to talk about. And if you want us to get it on the show, we can certainly work to get that taken care of for you. You can find high-res versions of all of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can check us out on Blue Sky at insightsintothings.bsky.social. We are now on LinkedIn. You can look for us at Insights Into Things Productions LLC, or you can check out our Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. All those links and more, as well as all of our episodes, are available on the web at www.insightsintothings.com. That's it. Another one in the books.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Technology, a podcast exploring the latest in computers, networking, home automation, mobile computing, and all things technology related. Our hosts will take a deeper dive into the latest and greatest in tech trends and give you the information you need to enable your tech-centric world.
This is Insights into Technology, episode 14, Cyber Trust or Bust. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and this is your tech news of the week. The record tells us that cyber trust marks the rollout in 2025. In a move to bolster consumer confidence and cybersecurity, the White House announced that smart devices in the U.S. will soon feature a, quote, cyber trust label, akin to the Energy Star efficiency mark. Launching this year, the program aims to certify that devices like baby monitors and security systems meet rigorous federal cybersecurity standards. Participating companies will undergo cybersecurity audits, and certified products will display a distinct Shield logo, helping consumers identify safer options. This bipartisan initiative, supported by the FCC and backed by major retailers like Amazon and Best Buy, also sets the stage for a 2027 mandate requiring federal agencies to purchase only certified devices. With the average U.S. household owning 21 connected devices, the risk of cyber attacks on everyday tech is high. Experts highlight the need for stronger security, citing vulnerabilities that have enabled hackers to exploit IoT devices for botnet attacks. The CyberTrust mark addresses these concerns by testing devices for robust security practices, such as changeable default passwords and software update policies. The hope is that this label will not only guide consumers, but also encourage manufacturers to adopt secure by design principles, marking a significant step forward in the fight against cyber threats. So this is definitely a new era in IoT security. One of the problems that we've run into is so many of these Internet of Things devices that people purchase, and you can purchase cameras, baby monitors, door locks, home security systems, sensors, whatever it is, your digital assistants and all of those things. You buy these things, you put them in place, and they just work, and people tend to forget about them. And when flaws are found in these systems or their cloud providers, for instance, I know several companies that provide these IoT devices. Almost all of these companies use a cloud interface or a cloud backend to process all of this information. When these things become compromised, people don't necessarily even think to go back and patch. Who patches a camera, right? Your light bulbs. Who patches a light bulb that's an internet connected light bulb? Most people don't even think of doing that. So this idea of pushing this standard forward that will have the government kind of oversee security authentication and security certification is definitely a step in the right direction. There are a number of flaws, I think, in this system, the way they're envisioning it at this point in time. One of those being the cost. Every time you have to go get a certification for a new device, there's going to be a cost associated with it. And that cost inevitably is going to be passed down to the consumer. Whether it's a retail consumer, a commercial consumer, or the end user. Someone's got to pay for the certification. The federal government's not going to do it for you. This does help to protect your digital home. A lot of people have multiple devices. We talked about average households having 21 connected devices. Each one of those potentially is a vector into your home network and could compromise your network. The other thing that this is intended to do is to bolster consumer confidence and awareness by having this symbol, this icon, whatever you want to call it, on a device when you go to Best Buy or Home Depot or wherever you buy your devices. When you see that on there, that's supposed to provide some level of comfort and assurance to you, but it's also supposed to make you, as the end user, mindful of the security concerns. And part of the philosophy that they're running with here is that if it's more in your face and at the forefront, people will start thinking more security-minded themselves in their deployment of these devices and their maintenance of them. The one problem that you run into here is you're getting, these certifications are basically getting commitments from manufacturers that they adhere to certain cybersecurity standards and that they're going to provide ongoing maintenance and patches for a certain period of time. The vast majority of companies can do that, but the problem you run into is a lot of these companies are smaller, consumer specialized niche companies that may not necessarily be here a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. So you may buy a product today that has this Shield logo on it saying that it's going to be secure. And for all you know, that company could be bought up, go out of business tomorrow, and there's really nothing to ensure that those updates continue to happen. And that's just market conditions themselves. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. I think the federal government needs to be careful about how they portray this. This is not the end-all, be-all of cybersecurity for the home consumer. And I think we need to be very careful about how we go about employing this new system. Bleeping Computer tells us that CISA says the government hack was limited to the Treasury. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, confirmed that the Treasury Department was the sole federal agency affected by a cyber attack attributed to Chinese state-sponsored hackers. The breach disclosed last week was deemed, quote, a major security incident after attackers exploited the stolen API key to compromise a Beyond Trust remote support instance. The hackers targeted sensitive offices like the Office of Foreign Asset Control, likely to gather intelligence on U.S. trade sanctions against Chinese entities. Have to change the article. It doesn't work that way. There we go. And that's not where we go. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. While the full impact is under assessment, officials reported no evidence of continued unauthorized access after the compromised system was shut down. CISA emphasized the importance of federal system security, assuring ongoing efforts to mitigate further risks. This high-profile incident underscores the vulnerabilities in critical government systems and strategic objectives behind state-sponsored cyber operations. So again, you take this in line with the last article that we talked about, where the federal government wants to dictate what cybersecurity standards are, and the federal government itself is being hacked multiple times over and over again because of their own lack of cybersecurity standards. So, you kind of have to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt here, because I think the government, because of the scale and size of bureaucracy, is not capable of reacting at the speed needed for cybersecurity and technical upgrades. Therefore, they should not be the ones that are dictating what other companies should be adhering to if they themselves can't resolve their cybersecurity issues. The interesting thing here is that they were targeting the Office of Foreign Asset Control and Strategic Cyber. The hackers focused on this, which suggests a deliberate attempt to gather intelligence on U.S. sanctions policies, which, given the discussions about tariffs and what the incoming Trump administration is interested in doing to offset what it thinks is an imbalance, this is kind of telling. There's obvious purpose with their actions here. It also raises questions about the geopolitical implications of the ongoing, what's now being called a cyber Cold War between the U.S. and China. It's definitely a situation that's escalating quickly. We also look at this and we realize that there are vulnerabilities with APIs. A lot of companies rely on APIs for back-end interfaces and opening doors to private systems so that you can have access to data. The breach leveraged, in this case, a stolen API tied to Beyond Trust software as a service remote support. And it highlights the critical need for stronger API security practices and monitoring. As APIs become a growing attack surface in cybersecurity, this is going to come up in the news much more often than we've seen in the past. China's cyber espionage playbook kind of showed us some of its tactics here. It fits into a broader pattern of state-sponsored espionage aimed at economic and political advantage. So as the political side of things moves, you're going to see cybersecurity evolve very quickly with it. The one good thing that came out of this, though, was the interagency coordination and the transparency. CISA's role, overall role in this entire incident speaks to the importance of that interagency collaboration. And we kind of saw that after 9/11 when we had all of our intelligence apparatus sort of operated in their own siloed environments. And then after 9/11, those discrepancies were analyzed, and they came up with the Department of Homeland Security to bring the intelligence organizations together. CISA's kind of trying to play that role now by keeping communication open, flowing information where it needs to go, and trying to coordinate defense against these things. And as the adversarial relationship between the U.S. and China continues to evolve, that level of coordination, I think, is going to be key. So it should be interesting moving forward. I think this is something that's going to evolve very quickly. We are probably going to see this escalate within the next 3 to 6 months once the new administration is in place, assuming they follow through with a lot of the, I'll say threats, because they weren't promises, they were threats against China. I think if those threats start to come to pass, you're going to see this more aggressive posture from China from the cybersecurity side of things. Bleeping Computer also tells us that Washington is suing T-Mobile over a data breach. In a significant legal move, Washington State has filed a lawsuit against T-Mobile over the 2021 data breach that compromised the sensitive personal information of over 2 million Washington residents and 79 million people nationwide. The breach, which began in March 2021, went undetected for 6 months and was only discovered when stolen data appeared on the dark web. Attorney General Rob Ferguson alleges that T-Mobile played down the breach's sensitivity, failed to notify impacted individuals properly, and provided misleading or inadequate information, particularly to customers whose Social Security numbers were exposed. The lawsuit highlights T-Mobile's alleged failure to address ongoing cybersecurity vulnerabilities despite previous attacks, and accuses the company of misrepresenting its cybersecurity capabilities, giving customers a false sense of safety. The state is seeking penalties for violating consumer protection laws, compensation for affected individuals, and court orders requiring T-Mobile to improve its cybersecurity practices and transparency. In response, T-Mobile expressed disagreement. Of course they did. So the extended detection gaps in enterprise security is something that is becoming more and more apparent. We saw this certainly with all the carriers that had this. The breach in this case went undetected for 6 months, and there's a lot of damage that can be done in 6 months, whether it's data exfiltration or discovering additional exploits and backdoors, or just simply planting software in the system itself to trigger at a later date. This also underscores the challenges that enterprise face in monitoring and detecting advanced threats. There's a lot of technology out there targeted for this. But again, this cat and mouse game with cybersecurity means that every time a new advancement comes out for detection, it almost immediately follows that there's some sort of workaround for that or some way to get past it. It also begs the question of, are businesses investing adequately in continuous monitoring and proactive threat detection? A lot of times you try to do this yourself with a homegrown solution, and you don't have the staff to monitor this, or you don't have the hardware or the automated systems that are strong enough to do this. The problem that you run into is a lot of the monitoring and detection that is relied on in these cases is automated. So it's pattern recognition. And when those patterns start to differ, or you get different signatures in some of the activity that you're looking for, the systems themselves are slow to adapt to it. until a breach happens, it's very difficult to discern what that signature actually is to feed back into the monitoring system. The failure of security in high target industries is a big key here. We know that they hit the telecom industries, which is obviously a massive issue. These telecom industries span across pretty much everything that we do as a country. T-Mobile serves as a cautionary tale for enterprises about the risks of underestimating their attractiveness to cyber adversaries. And this speaks to small and medium-sized businesses as well, where a lot of the philosophy of the business ownership and management is that, well, we're too small. They're not going to attack us. There's no reason for them to attack us. They're only going to go after the big fish. And that's not necessarily the case at all. A small, medium-sized company that happens to be doing business with the Department of Defense is ripe for attack because it's a vector into larger industries and a larger pool of resources. And a lot of companies don't realize that and have to understand that. An inadequate incident response is another thing that we saw here. There was a delay in their response. And then when they did respond, their response was inadequate. Their customer notification was lackluster. They were deceptive in what they were trying to portray. And we talked about this last week. It's one thing to not have evidence pointing directly to personal identifiable information being breached. And when you make a statement of, we have no evidence that this has been breached, that's true. When you have evidence that has been breached and then you make a statement contrary to that evidence, that's falsification of records there. That's fraud. And you have to be very careful. You certainly don't want to alarm the public, nor do you want to embolden the attackers by making announcements of significant breaches, but you also don't want to violate the law and commit fraud by misleading people either. If I, as a user, know that my personal information has been compromised, I can then take action. I can freeze my credit reports and various, change passwords, whatever it is I have to do to mitigate any potential dangers from that. But when you're not forthcoming with that information, you as a company have robbed me of the opportunity to combat your own incompetence. Then the last thing to discuss is the regulatory and financial ramification for businesses. This particular lawsuit from a state government illustrates how breaches can lead to long-term financial and legal repercussions, and it signals a warning to enterprises to prioritize compliance with consumer protection and data security laws. Now, again, these compliance regulations are being dictated by the government, and the compliance regulations are months to years behind where the industry is. So while compliance with these regulations can be costly, they're not particularly arduous or difficult to achieve. But if you're not making the effort, you're not going to achieve them. So we'll see where this goes. T-Mobile last week had talked about the fact that they had mitigated the telecom breach itself. This week is a different story. So it just goes to show you how the news cycle can evolve very quickly when information of fact can come out. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do that, though, I want to take a moment to invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find all of our podcasts, both audio and video, listed as Insights into Things on your favorite podcast outlet, software, distributor. We're available on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, not Stitcher. I keep saying Stitcher, but they're not around anymore. Google, iHeartRadio, Buzzsprout, Amazon. I actually listened to it on Amazon the other day, which was interesting. We also invite you to reach out, give us your feedback, tell us how we're doing. What do you want us to talk about? What do you not want us to talk about? You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We're available on Twitter or X at insights_things. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Insights Into Things Podcast. You can also call into us now. We don't have a live person answering the phones, but you're welcome to leave a voicemail on the line, and we can integrate that into one of our future shows as appropriate. You can call in to 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. Or you can find links to all these and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of your favorite gaming podcast finishing with a play?
Oh no!
Well, check out No Credits Rolled, where we play the games but rarely finish them. How's it going, folks? I'm Sam Whalen, your friendly host at No Credits Rolled, the ultimate gaming podcast, where we dish out the latest scoops and reviews on all your beloved video games.
Hey, listen.
Not only that, but we spice things up with some guest interviews and even give you, yes, you, a chance to have your say. Tune in every other week for a fresh dose of No Credits Rolled, available on all major podcast platforms, and hit us up on social media at No Credits Rolled. So why wait? Let's dive into the gaming world together, where finishing games is optional, but the fun is guaranteed.
Welcome back. We are talking tech today. Next up is an article from The Verge, and they tell us about Samsung's smartphone subscription. Samsung is set to expand its AI subscription club to its Galaxy smartphones and the upcoming Bally AI robot starting next month. Initially launched in South Korea last December for home appliances, the subscription model offers consumers access to AI-powered devices with optional repair and maintenance services, allowing lower upfront costs, while Galaxy AI features will remain free at least until the end of 2025. The subscription option adds flexibility for users. The rollout will begin in South Korea with Bally, also slated for a subscription-based launch in both Korea and the US. It's unclear if this model will expand globally, but more details will emerge as Samsung's Galaxy Unpacked event on January 22nd, where the Galaxy S25 series is expected to debut. This marks a notable step in Samsung's strategy to integrate AI capabilities across its product lineup through flexible payment models. So the emerging hardware as a service trend, this is right up that alley. Samsung's subscription model for smartphones and AI-powered devices highlights a shift towards hardware as a service. And in the commercial and enterprise industry, this is fairly common. You know, people lease printers, they lease servers, they lease network equipment. This isn't really something new. This is an interesting twist on consumer device usage. And they're now pushing this towards businesses for their smartphones. Let's face it. I mean, smartphones are well over $1,000 a pop at this point in time. And every 2 years, if you rotate your phones out to maintain your security and update status on them, that gets very costly for companies. And a lot of companies can't afford to do that constantly. We're looking at probably tens of thousands of dollars annually to maintain this type of arrangement. And the idea is the AI devices, the AI powered devices are even more expensive than what you're looking at for a standard phone. It's a cost-effective way to maintain your inventory as a company. The regional trial and scalability raises some questions, with the initial rollout limited to South Korea and Bally launching in the U.S. Businesses may question when and how such subscription services will scale globally. Companies that do have staff around the globe wouldn't necessarily apply to this until it's a full rollout. The other concern here is vendor lock-in. We run into this issue already with mobile device management, where they're not necessarily, depending on which model you go with, they're not universally compatible between Android devices. In this case here, enterprises need to consider the implications of relying on a subscription-based device, including the vendor lock-in. The need to address privacy risks associated with the AI-powered data processing is also a concern. I don't know how much AI people are going to be using on their smartphones for business use. Most of that, I would assume, would happen on a more robust computing platform. A lot of what we see from an AI standpoint on smartphones now is kind of gimmicky and personal stuff. So I don't know how much of a business application these types of services will have. But if nothing else, the concept itself offers another option for people. It offers a way basically to finance your maintenance in your smartphones rather than stealing from Peter to pay Paul with your upgrade and things of those nature. That can get almost cutthroat in some companies when you have to deal with, Susie got a new phone, how can I get one, and stuff like that. With a lease program here, you may see some problems go away. Our next article comes to us from Wired. They tell us that Meta's new free speech is a gamble. Meta's recent decision to abandon its partnership with fact checkers and overhaul its moderation policies signals a shift in its approach to content management, drawing comparisons to Elon Musk's X. The company plans to replace its fact-checking programs with a community notes model, similar to X's crowdsource system, citing, quote, free speech as its motivation. Critics argue this move could open the floodgates to misinformation and hate speech, as Meta loosens its hateful conduct policy and aligns itself with conservative narratives. With 3 billion monthly users across its platforms, Meta faces significant challenges in scaling a crowdsourced moderation system, raising concerns about the potential for unchecked disinformation and bigotry. These changes, coupled with political appointments, like the Trump ally Dana White to its board, have sparked debate about Meta's direction, particularly as it seeks to reconcile free speech with responsible content management. Experts warn that such shifts might lead to an ecosystem rife with misinformation, diminished trust, and further polarization. Meta's path appears to mimic X's, but on a much larger scale, with consequences for the global information landscape. The content management shifts here tend to cause some concerns for enterprise brand safety. We saw this with X after Elon Musk took over and started making wholesale changes. You had a lot of sponsors decide that they were not going to stay on the platform, and they bailed. And, you're going to see something similar to that probably with Meta, but you're going to see it on a much larger scale. They have a significantly larger market share. The transition from fact-checking to community notes raises concerns about your brand. Do you want to be associated with some of the things that are going to be coming out on Meta now without these fact checks? Do you also have to worry about enterprise communication strategies? A lot of companies have now turned to social media platforms such as X and Facebook to communicate with their customers. Meta is loosening its hateful conduct policy and embracing its own unique idea of free speech could impact that. Businesses using the platforms may face increased scrutiny over their association with controversial or harmful content appearing alongside their ads. And then we mentioned the scalability for crowdsourced moderation. Implementing a community note system at scale poses significant challenges. And a lot of this is theoretical because no one's ever tried to do it at this scale. An inability to effectively moderate content could impact enterprise use of the platform. You could see a lot of companies moving away from Meta and advertising and communication and their public presence because it's damaging to their brands. And I think Meta may have, in their effort to gain political favor with the new administration, may have overlooked a lot of these risks. The political alignment and enterprise trust don't necessarily align with each other. Meta's policy changes and board appointments suggest a shift toward a politically aligned strategy. And it's worthwhile mentioning that I don't disagree with their approach to it or their need to take this approach to it. We have an incoming administration that has openly stated its hostile policy towards any